A faith shared by 1.6 billion people, Islam is one of the largest religions in the world. One of every 4 people in the world identify themselves as Muslim. If Islam, as its followers say, is a religion of peace, why is it that it is always the Muslim-dominant countries making the prime-time news, enduring mass killings and genocide? Is the answer Islam? It is unfair to make the carpet statement of calling a religion violent and hateful, using a region marred by adversity for centuries even before the revelation of Islam as evidence. In this video, we will be looking at similar statements made by those malinformed about Islam, and perhaps initiate an understanding.
Islam is intolerant of other religions. Many people believe that Islam doesn't allow other worshippers of other religions to worship. We now look at Surah Kafirun. The Quran exists in chapters called surahs. Surah 109 is Al-Kafirun, meaning the disbelievers. It goes like this. Say, O Prophet, disbelievers, I will not worship what you worship, nor are you a worshipper of what I worship. I will never worship what you worship, nor will you ever worship what I worship. To you be your religion, to me mine. This simple surah presents the right of a worshipper to worship. Nowhere does it say for disbelievers to crack down on those without faith. Not only does Islam not prohibit other people of other religions from worshipping how they please, it doesn't ignore them either. Islam goes as far as to state the rights of other people of other religions to worship and to be respectful of each other. This notion of camaraderie and brotherhood, and essentially being a good neighbor, is prevalent throughout the Quran. Islam is a dividing religion. The Quran mentions other prophets many times more than Muhammad, peace be upon him. Unknown to many, Muhammad is mentioned only 5 times in the Quran. Jesus is mentioned 25 times, 5 times more than Muhammad, peace be upon them both. And Moses is mentioned a whopping 136 times in the entire Quran. Islam ties the prophets as revealing the same truth. They are equal to one another. Islam teaches that all of the prophets were sent by the one true God to teach the one truth of submitting one's will to God. The prophets were God's messengers to bring forth the truth that we call religion. This way, Islam teaches all religions descended from the first prophet, Adam, peace be upon him, and tied them together, preaching the same general message, just in different contexts. These qualities teach Islam to be a unification, a seal upon the truth preserved through the unchanged holy book, the Quran. Islam encourages violence. Let's look at Surah Al-Baqarah, meaning the calf. It is Surah number 2 in the Quran. In the Surah, ayah, or verse, number 191 through 193 state, "Kill the disbelievers wherever you see them, and turn them out from where they turned you." This famous verse sparks controversy and excitement among the ignorant and Islamophobic crowds. Without context, it seems a radical order from a violent warrior god to obliterate innocent and righteous people who just are different. When given context, however, the ayah is describing a defensive war. Moreover, it is a defensive war against oppressors. The ayahs following it order not to transgress limits and to seek peace as soon as the oppressors seek it. Islam is not a faith that preaches violence, but also it is one that teaches not to be passive to blows to an innocent community, and gives the right to fight back to defend. The overwhelming message of peace in Islam is undeniable. The word Islam itself means to submit, to surrender oneself. The millions of Muslims around the world greet each other with the phrase Assalamu alaikum, meaning peace be upon you. It is strange how this undeniable message of peace is swiftly disregarded by those promoting hatred against Muslims around the globe. Works of mythology depict gods as those of war, of fury, of agony, to the description God gives himself in the Quran. He is described of a God of mercy and forgiveness, not of wrath, an exalted being of honor and peace, not destruction. As a religion, Islam is one of peace. However, a very minor portion of the imperfect practitioners of Islam, Muslims, may not always be. The inhumane crimes committed by the monsters that kill innocent people in the name of Islam, avidly advertised in modern media, are almost always motivated by some political agenda, not by the Quran itself. The Prophet had bad character. When critics criticize the Prophet, peace be upon him, they always bring up the fact of him marrying minors. We have to understand that this was in a different time, in a different context. It's uncomparable to modern times. People developed very differently in those times. Life expectancy was much lower than now, meaning people had to expedite their life and get married and have kids early on. Even in different states in the USA, the age of marriage varies. The fact that this criticism of the Prophet became an issue only as recently as the 1950s implies that it wasn't out of the norm back then. It just isn't a logical argument to say that the Prophet had bad character because he married a minor. Now we look at the issue of multiple marriages of the Prophet. Through this argument, critics imply that the Prophet just wanted to fulfill his own desires. Firstly, we have to realize that this was a different time period. Having multiple wives was not something out of the ordinary back then. Looking at the Bible, we see that Prophet Abraham had 2 wives, Prophet Solomon 700 wives and 300 concubines. Secondly, to those who think the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had wives to fulfill his own desires, note that all but one of the Prophet Muhammad's wives were ex-divorcees and widows. In a time when women were much more vulnerable than they are now, Muhammad, peace be upon him, married them to protect them from harm when nobody would. He didn't marry for his own sake, but for the sake of the community and the vulnerable women. If he did marry for his own desires, why would he reject the gifts of the finest women in his tribe? The argument simply doesn't make sense. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a very humble man. He lived simply throughout his life. It doesn't make sense to declare someone as having bad character when he was referred to in the community as Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy.
Women are oppressed in Islam. Islam is often viewed as a misogynistic religion that gives women little to no rights. This misconception, however, does not stem from what Islam has to say about women, but from the skewed cultural practices of many predominantly Muslim countries. In Surah Nisa, men and women are depicted as being created from a single soul. Thus, it is clear that Islam holds men and women spiritually equal. One gender is not superior to the other, nor does one come before the other. Many also believe that Islam views women as trophies to be kept by their husband for mere decoration. This statement is simply not true. As also stated in Surah Nisa, men and women are for the mutual benefit of each other. Women have just as much responsibility within a marriage as men. Not only are women spiritually equal, but socially as well. Women have the right to work, just as men do. In fact, Khadija, the beloved wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them both, was a businesswoman, just as her husband was a businessman. There are various Muslim female figures that have made vast impacts to society. For example, the University of Al-Qarawiyyin, the oldest degree-granting university in the world, was founded by Fatima al-Fikri. This would not be possible if women were not given social rights in Islam. The hijab, a scarf used to veil one's hair, is often viewed as discriminatory for men do not have to wear such a covering. However, the hijab is not to oppress or segregate women, it is to stop the objectification of their beauty. A hijab allows women to be seen not for their appearance, but for their mind and soul. Politically, Islam has given rights to women that they had to fight for in other places of the world. For example, the Quran secured property rights for women. This was not prevalent in Europe until the 19th century, with limitations even then. Sit al-Mulk, a Muslim woman, became a head of the Islamic State early on in Islamic history, whereas the first woman politician in America was not elected until 1916. Infanticide, a practice common in pre-Islamic Arabia, in which newborn girls were buried simply because of their gender, was banned by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, on the basis of the Quranic teachings of gender equity. Out of many, these few examples make it clear that Islam does not maltreat women. Men and women may not be completely equal in the specific responsibilities they have, but the impact of their separate responsibilities are very much equal. Islam is a faith shared by 1 billion people. It is the fastest growing religion in the world. Rather than blindly following the information obtained from the media, it is beneficial to do personal research before upholding an opinion. If you have any questions, reach out to your local Muslim community. Talk to the Imam, talk to Muslim friends. If none is available, seek resources from reputable sources. For example, visit yislam.org or give them a call at 1-877-YISLAM, or head on over to the r/Islam subreddit. All the links will be listed below. Thank you for watching, and we hope we have dissolved some of your misconceptions that you might have had about Islam.